Welcome back to Authors Aloud. I'm Kristin, and this is Ashley. Today, we've got a powerhouse guest, 7-time Emmy winner, speaker, TV and radio personality, podcaster, consultant, professor, you name it.
That's right. She does it all. Jeanne Sparrow is with us today to talk about her book, Fearless Authenticity: Lead Better, Sell More, and Speak Sensationally. It's all about finding your voice, owning your value, and showing up with courage.
We're so excited to dive into this one because honestly, who doesn't want to be more authentic and fearless?
Let's welcome Jeanne.
Hello.
Hello, Kristin. Thank you for having me.
We're
so
excited.
So glad you're here. Tell us where you're sitting right now.
I am sitting in Chicago
Oh,
in my office in my apartment.
lovely, lovely, lovely. Well, Jeanne, your mantra is be brave, be free, be you, right?
Yes.
Can you tell us what that means to you? And as an addition, why did you start with that?
So I will tell you why I started with it first.
Okay, great.
Because fearless authenticity is about the reality that all of us move through this world thinking we're authentic, and we are to a certain degree. But all of us have a range that is comfortable for us to express it in. The problem comes because there's so many external pressures, let's call them levers, perhaps, that come into taking us away from our authenticity. And I believe it takes being fearless to be able to really show up in the value that you have to offer other people and stay true to yourself in the process of serving others, being around others, engaging with people, making connections. The temptation from when we are children to fit in, because all of us want to belong. There is nothing wrong with that. And it's absolutely beautiful. The problem is sometimes we twist ourselves into pretzels to do so. And the reason why I say be brave, be free, be you, because it's the three elements, I think, that lead you to being authentic. It takes courage to do that, to be able to say no sometimes, because being true to yourself sometimes means saying no to other people. And it also means sometimes being vulnerable, stepping out, and you need to be brave to do that. You also need to be free to do that. Like, you have to open your mind. You have to, as this one conference that I'm about to MC this year, their theme is Unbound. You have to unbind yourself from expectations, from your own beliefs that may or may not be true about yourself, other people, or the world.
Yeah.
So you have to kind of, free your mind, and your will follow.
That's right.
And okay. And then just be you and understand that who you are is enough. Who you are is amazing. And a lot of us don't believe that because of different things we've heard, different things we've believed. So I believe that is the path that leads us to that authenticity in the fearless way that really does serve us, the world, and each other.
That's
I love
amazing.
It actually reminds me a lot of a conversation I have fairly frequently with my children, who are 10 and almost 13. Watching them like be in school means you're essentially watching like the world take aim at everything that is special and unique about them. So we have this
Especially that age.
Oh,
Especially
it's
that
brutal.
age.
Oh yeah.
It is.
And you spend your whole time in school trying to figure out how you fit in and figuring out all the ways that you're weird, and then stifling those. And then the second you start applying for colleges, people say, well, how are you unique?
Right.
And the whole thing is flipped. I just think it's so fascinating that, you were supposed to be covering this up for 18 years. And then all of a sudden, well, what makes you, literally nothing will make them unique. They listened.
Exactly.
Not my children, obviously. They're
and that's what I love.
imbued
But
with big
you know what?
personalities.
I want to give you a different alternative view of that. Think about it this way. If we spend our formative years figuring out how to fit in or what fitting in looks like, by definition, we are also understanding where we fall outside of the boundaries of those boxes that people have done. And I think if we talk to our children about it in a certain way, the children in our lives, whether that's as an auntie like me, a parent like you, or in your community, you get to help them define for themselves, okay, I can be true to myself in this environment and fit inside this box so I feel comfortable. But I'm also knowing that these are the things I am outside of that box that I might hold special for me, for my family, for other people who
Mhm.
truly welcome that, right? And it's in a way by understanding what the definitions are inside of a space
Mhm.
helps you to see who you are when you are outside of it.
That's
Yeah.
fascinating.
I love that.
I
And
mean,
I
it's
Yeah.
boundaries are there for you to say in, out,
Yeah.
and around, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. I also think for me this rings true in a different way. If you come from any kind of trauma or severe dysfunction, the bravery it takes to face that, right? To come to terms with it
100%.
and peel back every single layer to figure out who the hell you even are,
Mhm.
right? And so what you're saying rings really true because you're brave first, and then there's this amazing freedom. And I would say just in the last 10 to 15 years, I've gone, oh, now I'm me, right?
Mhm.
I have figured out who me is, right?
And the beautiful part there is then you get to choose where you go with that, because who
Mhm.
we are today is not who we're going to be tomorrow,
Right.
and so on and so forth, but we can still stay true to ourselves as we develop and dive deeper in, because once you get that deep knowing of who you
Mhm.
are and what value you have and the values you hold, then you can stay true to that as you move forward. Because I think a lot of times what happens, especially when we get to middle age, we've made a lot of decisions based on the roles that we inhabit,
Mhm.
whether
Mhm.
that's, parent, whether that's spouse, partner, whatever term you use, whether that is, um, whatever it is you do for a living. So teacher, accountant, doctor,
Mhm.
like those, all these titles have things that go with them. Caregiver for your parents, especially nowadays, like as a middle-aged person, you are sandwiched between your children and your
Mhm.
parents.
Mhm.
And those are very interesting navigations to go through, like I did
Yeah.
that with my father, like going from being a child, who seeks their
Yep.
assistance to being the one helping them is a very difficult and
It
challenging,
is.
but also rewarding journey because you get to see them in a very different way and get to see yourself in a different way. But a lot of times we get stuck in what the definitions of these roles are,
Mhm.
and we inhabit the definitions of the role and the role itself as opposed to how we ourselves uniquely do that role. You know, if every mother in the world is different than the next, that does not mean she is less than, more than, or what have you. But I know all of my girlfriends with children, especially with their first kids, feel so much pressure
Mm.
from the mothers around them. Like, you should be doing this and you should,
Mm.
and I was like, any woman who tells you how to be a mother, and with that kind of pressure, like, it's one thing to give advice and help, but it's another thing to judge. I was
Yeah.
like, that woman is not your friend,
Right.
Right.
right? Because and she got something else she dealing with. Say
That's
bless
right.
your heart and keep it moving.
I'm
But
from the South, so I know what bless your heart means.
I'm from Louisiana. Bless your heart has many different meanings.
That's right.
Okay.
That's true.
Okay.
It can
Okay.
be legitimate. It can be bless your heart,
100%.
but it can also be, oh, bless your heart.
Bless your heart.
Yeah.
Jean, you've had such a dynamic career across TV, radio, teaching, consulting. What led you to put your ideas into this book?
I got tricked into it.
Do tell. I have to know.
So, okay, when I didn't know anything about being an entrepreneur. I've been, I had always wanted to have a business because I was like, this sounds like fun. My mom had a side business. My grandfather was a farmer, so he ran his own business. I
Yeah,
had
no,
uncles
sounds
who had
fun.
their own
Sounds like
businesses.
famous last
So I'm like,
words.
yeah.
Should be
And
fine.
and So when I was politely invited to find my success elsewhere, when my last show was canceled,
I
um,
love that,
Politely
politely.
invited to find my success
Politely
elsewhere.
invited
and
to find your
because I
success
still had a year
elsewhere.
left on my contract, and
Oh,
so those people were the first investors in my business. Thank you very much.
there you go.
Um, but when I got a business coach, and at the time when I started, I was doing media training and presentation training. It felt like the right thing to be doing with my expertise or what have you. And when I started talking to my business coach about my business, you know how they say your clients tell you what your business actually is?
Mhm.
I wasn't listening to that, because what I had discovered was I had I had to people would come to me for help with things, like whether they were about to launch something and were gonna do a campaign and they didn't have, the resources to have a real PR firm that was gonna be doing the coaching or what have you, or they could only, do certain services piecemeal or things like that. Those are the types of clients I was getting. But I found that most people that wanted to be, standing in front of people or in front of cameras or behind microphones and had a concern about that, there were steps I had to take them through before they were even ready to start doing the
Mm,
actual media training part of it. Like, that part I can do in a day. Right?
Mm.
A couple days. But to get them ready for that, I had to devise a system, because I was like, "Wait a minute, what are you even talking about?" Like, and, what value are you bringing to other people? What is it? What's the message? What's the action piece? Like, trying to get them through their talking points, because even though they had this nice little, press release, I'm like, "You can't read the press release to people, you gotta talk about it. So what are your points and whatever?" And so my business coach said to me, she was like, "You're selling the wrong thing." She was like, "You have a much higher value in this process you've developed to get them ready, because it's something a lot of people struggle with on a lot
mm,
of different levels for a lot of different reasons, and you're basically giving them this thing that's far more valuable, and you're not charging for it. In fact, I think you should speak about it, and I think you should write a book about it." And I was just like, "Yeah, lady, I don't think so." I was like, I'm not a celebrity." She was like, "And you've been on TV and radio." And she said, "You a celebrity in one place." And I was just like, "Yeah, no." And I was just like, "Nobody wants to read a book from me." She was like, "Okay." And she left it alone. And then she this is how she tricked me. Every time I would meet with her, we would, talk, and I always have stories, because that's what I do. I tell stories.
mhm,
That's what I've always done. That's what my
right.
family does. Like, that's just my
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
So she was like, "Every time we meet, you have at least 3 awesome stories that I love. You make me laugh. Sometimes you hit me in the heart." She was like, "You tell them so well." She was like, "Can you do me a favor and just write a list of all, the stories that you have? Just put the titles on a page,
Yeah.
whatever." And at that point, she was getting close to convincing me to speaking, because I didn't know that speaking was a whole industry at that
Mm,
time. But even though I had spent my whole life speaking and doing that, I was doing that stuff for free, because I was on the air and the radio or TV, and people ask you to do that for their charity. Why are you going to charge? I was just like, "Oh, yeah, 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 I'll do it." Da, 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 not realizing how much people pay folks to do this. Right. So I had kind of bought into that part. So I'm thinking we're doing speech development stuff. Right. Then she says, "Look, humor me. I want to go back to the book for a second." And this is like another meeting. She goes, "Write just an outline of this process you have and what you think, how you would explain it to somebody that you weren't working with." And she was like, "Just write a rough outline for me." So these are 2 separate things. Then another meeting, maybe another one down, she comes to we had lunch this time. We're sitting in the Cooper's Hawk with our wine, because I had a righteous business coach who we
I
would sit
like
there and
it.
talk
I
about
like
things.
it.
So she comes in with with a little folder, and she puts out puts out her little printouts of my stories and my things. She says, "Okay, Jean." She was like, "This is an I don't have to even make any edits to this. This is an excellent outline for a book." And she said, "All you have to do is take the stories on this page and attach them to the lessons that you're teaching here, and boom, you have a book." And I was like, "Yeah,
What a gift
okay."
sh
She gave you.
Right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Right? And the thing
That's
is,
awesome.
here's the crazy piece. That outline did not change for the book. The things that I put in it and the things that happened from the time that I wrote that to the time that I actually published did make the book richer and a little bit different, but the same basic outline I wrote with her just to humor her
Mm.
turned out to be the thing. And um so that's a really long, convoluted way of telling you I don't even know. I didn't a book was not on my radar, Ashley.
Well, a book should be on everyone's radar. I feel like I talk
Agreed.
to many, many brilliant people, especially women, and I know I have talked ad nauseum about this, but we see every man on the planet has written whatever swill on a piece of paper and published it, and all the women I know are doing these wonderful, brilliant things, and one day when I have time, nobody wants to hear it. Nope. We just all write a book and publish it.
And we never and we never have time, and we because but
Right.
we make time, and that's really the important piece, and yeah, but it's an interesting process that's not for everybody.
Well, we're going to get into process a little bit. I want to talk a little bit about fearless authenticity. Well, let's back up a little.
Mhm.
Let's talk about communication.
Yes.
You
Okay.
talk you say that communication has the power to change lives
Yes.
from connections and create communities, right?
Yes.
Can you share an example of that
Mm.
you saw firsthand and that you saw it happen?
Personal, professional.
Either way, whatever whatever strikes your heart, whatever you feel led to share.
That's such a unique example, uh, request. Um,
I mean, it could be anything in the communication realm in that regard, just something that you saw where communicating effectively changed lives.
I would actually turn this into a question for
Okay.
people because this is what I want people to think about. And this is more of this is something that I think happens to all of us,
Mhm.
and it's a different, I hope, a different way of looking at it. Have you ever met somebody that you hated on sight? Like, just
Sure.
it was on site,
Yep.
like,
Yeah.
Mhm.
okay. Now, have you ever had a little bit of time pass and you run into that same person and you go, "I actually really like them," where it turns around? I think many of us have had that happen where it's like when you give somebody a chance, and it's usually and this often I think happens at work, where somebody rubs you the wrong way the first time you meet them, what have you. I believe that that is what is at the essence of what I'm talking about when I say communication can change worlds, because
Mm.
when you can shift how you interact with somebody based on the words you say, based on the way you receive the words they're saying, and then you start to dig into the layers underneath, because there's always subtext no matter what anybody says about them being upfront or whatever. There's always something
Mhm.
under the layers, because that's the thing that we respond to as human beings, right? We are not that far removed, evolutionarily speaking, from, even though we have all of our technology and all of these things, and the pace at which we are developing is really fast now, but we are not that far removed from when we did not even read,
Hmm.
right? Where having an actual book was the luxury of the elite.
Right.
And that most people sign their names with an X. Like, literally, that's 200 years ago,
Right.
which in the history of the world
Is
is
nothing.
fairly short, right? We've made I don't think people stop and think about how, like, life has changed even in the last 100 years. Like, I think about, like, even in my own career, right? I started in radio, everything was 100% analog, like physical tape,
Right, right,
physical
right.
everything, whatever. Now I can pack up my studio and take it wherever I go because it's 100% digital.
Yeah.
But the shift that happens between um, what your gut tells you initially about somebody, you're picking up on something one time based on a communication,
Mm.
right? Something that person is telling you or not telling you that rubs you the wrong way. And as you have to or are forced to or just maybe happenstance encounter them again, then it shifts and you start to see something different. Something different is being communicated either on your end, their end, or both. You're either receiving differently, you're giving them different input, and they're giving you something back. The best example I have of that is personal. It just came to me. And I actually talk about it in the book. It's one of my dearest friends now. She and I together. And when I met her, our initial meeting was great, and then we had a really difficult time adjusting to working with each other, and nobody was helping us, right?
Mhm.
And there was a moment when I just decided to find one thing that I admired about her and focus on that
Mm.
because I knew that we were good together as on-air partners, but we were just having a hard time adjusting to because we were both used to doing things our own ways. We had both run our own shows, and so coming together to do that was really challenging. And the thing is, people pick up on that
Mhm.
because when you make a decision about how you're going to interact with somebody,
Yeah.
it changes the temperature of your interactions, and then they respond differently. And we are all mirrors for each other,
Mm.
right? She was probably showing me some stuff I didn't want to see.
Mm.
And then I decided to see something different,
Yeah.
and
I
we
had
got
a
it shifted everything. So it's not just communication that changes things. It's about how we decide to show up, which is also part of the authenticity of who we are and how
yeah.
we see other people.
There was a woman that I worked with. I was a contractor at a company, not the one I'm at now. Um, not my not my VA rocks or my audio rocks. So I'm not talking about anybody there, I promise. Um, I was working formerly several years back at this company, and there was a woman that I had to interact with, and it was all virtual. And immediately, the first time I met her, I didn't like her. And she had a little bit of a chip on her shoulder about some things. She definitely wanted to make sure that she was making it clear that she had ownership of things and I did not, right? It was
That's a
that kind.
charming quality.
Yeah, it was very frustrating for me. And I was trying to figure out how to still be professional, but push back and be like, I'm not going to deal with your nonsense, right? Like, how do you do that? We ended up in a training together, an on-site training. So we were in person, and there was a situation in which everybody was, I don't remember what the thing was, but they were asking questions. And she started talking pretty vulnerably about some things, and in her personal life. And I immediately softened. I felt myself softened, and I was a little mad about it. I was a little mad that I was softening, right? And I was like, "Oh," and my best friend was in the room and she knew everything. And I looked at her and she looked at me and we were like, "Oh, man, now we got to change how we think." Right?
Which is It's easier to change what you think than it is to change what you believe, though, so that's a good
Well,
thing.
and after that, I know that I did come to those interactions differently, and then she softened, right? And it made me walk away from that going, I'm not always going to be in a situation where someone is going to sit down and be vulnerable in front of me. But that person has vulnerable things about them. They may have things that led them to the situation where they feel like they need to show control in this situation. And maybe I need to soften ahead of time and treat them a little differently.
Called grace.
Mm,
Because here's the thing, and I never want anybody to take what I'm saying as ignoring your gut
sure.
or ignoring your boundaries or abandoning them for somebody else, absolutely keep those in place. But always have this trap door
Mm.
that allows you to allow other people to be human and
Mhm.
allows you to let people like, okay, if I don't, because I've had people who I've never liked that I've worked with before,
Sure.
but you can always find something to because I don't have. My mama told me this a long time ago when I was a kid. She was like, you don't have to like somebody to work with them. You have to respect them. Respect is the only thing that you really need. And if you can find something to respect, something to admire, you can at least find some kind of peace if you have to coexist with them
Mhm.
in a space, right? But I do think, and this is what I don't know that my mother said explicitly about respect, was that there is an element of grace in that.
Mm.
That there is an element of saying, you know what, there's stuff I don't know. And I don't need to know to be kind. I don't need to know to be able to accomplish a goal together. And I think that if we weren't so focused on being right all
Mhm.
the time,
Mhm.
that we could be a little better.
It's so hard because I
Mm.
like being right.
Do all
I
of us do, but we are not.
Right. I don't have a problem with being wrong, but boy, do I like being right.
I know, cause listen, so there's no satisfaction as being like, oh,
I
Uh-huh.
do have a wish that everyone that I was right about at some point in my life comes back and tells me, "Oh, I understand now
mm.
why you were right." And I know that it will never happen, but it is
Uh-huh.
it is my
Your deepest
sincerest
desire.
wish.
But let me tell you something, Ashley, when it does happen, when you do get
It's
that
so
come
sweet.
back around, because let me tell you, the ones who circle the block to come back and tell you that,
Yeah,
it will be the ones that you didn't see coming, and you just sit back, live long enough, and you will have that moment where you're just like, "Eh, okay, all
Huh?
right," but
Right
it
now,
never
I
feels
might.
exactly like you think it will. You will
Yeah.
never feel like gloating
Yeah, yeah.
because often when that circle back comes around, it is because of something that
Sure.
you would never wish on somebody.
Yeah.
And that's usually the instances in which it happens. But, you know, I think that we this is I'll wrap this up with this thought, and because this is the thing that I find a lot in my work is that people think because you know we've been communicating since the moment we entered the world. You know, you come out of the womb with a communication. It's
Right.
usually not a pleasant one. It's usually a scream and
Mm.
a and into the world. But we communicate in so many different ways, and we do it. But we take it for granted. We think that we're great at it and we don't work at it because we take it for granted. And
Mm.
until things start to break down, and then we're grasping at straws, looking at things, getting all you know, off focus. And this is true in business and personal, because when things start to fall apart, I guarantee you there's a communication problem at the root of it. You ever heard that question, you know, every sales problem is a marketing problem? I'm a, I'm a take it a step back. Every marketing problem
is definitely a
is
sales.
a communication problem. Is it what?
I was gonna sales. I'm used to sales and marketing pointing the finger at one another.
Absolutely. But no, you gotta take it back to the essence of what the problem is, and it's almost always a communication problem. Every time I get brought
Mm.
into an organization to consult about something like that happens externally, there's an internal problem, and it's always about how, you know, there's either a transfer of knowledge and information problem. There is, you know, a change management issue going on, and change management really just boils down to how you are communicating about what it is you're doing. Yes, you may do an org chart, you know, change organizational, you know, uh, duties change or whatever, but how you talking about that?
That's right. That's right.
And people have devalued communication, and it's at the basis of everything. You cannot connect with somebody, you cannot lead somebody, you cannot sell somebody on something if you are not communicating well.
Mm.
And I don't know why I gotta fight people about this.
Love it.
Fearless authenticity is part strategy, part action guide. What's one simple authenticity action our listeners could take today?
Ask yourself 3 questions. What is the work that I do or want to do? How does that work benefit others? And what's important to me about providing those benefits to other people? That is how you tune into what your value is, and that is where you get the foundation and the strength from which to do everything it is you want to do. When you understand how you have power, transfer power, and value to others, it changes how you walk into rooms. It changes how you talk to people. It changes how people see you
Mm.
because we are all reflections of each other. And once you get to see yourself a little more accurately as you are beautifully made, then others will see that as well. That is the first thing you do. When you know where you stand, it becomes so much easier to let other people stand where they stand.
Mm.
And as leaders, that's really important because that's how you start to see how you develop things and build them around you and see what you can find. Because it also reduces competition, it increases collaboration. Like it literally changes everything. But you have to start with you,
So, what's the biggest fearless moment in your own career?
girl. How much time y'all got? Um, cause look, I my friends tell me that I'm a risk taker.
Okay.
And one of my friends was like, "You just jump off of every cliff there is available." And I was like, I guess that's what it looks like from the outside."
Mm.
Starting my business was a big one,
Uh-huh.
not working for somebody else because I never thought that it was possible given what I did for a living.
Mhm.
Like equipment used to be really expensive. So I always thought I was like, well, maybe I'll just have a production company. That's what you used to do. Back in the day,
Yeah.
Bill Curtis did it, Oprah did it,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
that's
yeah.
essentially what their businesses are built on. And I
Yeah.
was like, that takes investors. I don't know how to tell people, how to invest in me. Let's see, what are some other fearless moments? I've left several jobs.
Mm.
I remember I dated this guy one time who was like, "Now I know you didn't get fired," because he was also in the business. And he said, "I know you didn't get fired from that job." He was like, "Why would you walk away from a six-figure job like that? Why?" And I was like, "I wasn't doing what I wanted to do." And he was just like, "And you just left that." He said, "You didn't," and he said, "Because you kind of fell off for a little bit. I didn't see you anywhere or whatever." I was like, "Yeah, I was freelancing. I was doing my thing. I was still making money." I was like, "But I just wasn't on the air." And he
Yeah.
was just like, and he said, "You didn't have another job?" I said, "Well, I always got other streams of income." I was like, "But no, I didn't, it wasn't working out and they didn't do what I asked them to do." And, I told them what I wanted and they didn't give it to me. So I was like, "Okay, I'm out." Because I'm big on consequences. I'm big on
Mm.
consequences and think like if this is what it takes for us to be in relationship together, whatever that relationship is.
Right.
And if and I will compromise, but it's like if there are deal breakers. So
Sure.
there was a deal breaker moment and I left that job and I was just kind of like, what the did I do?
I love it.
But it works out. It all because
Yeah.
you know what? I am a pathological I come from a family of pathological optimists,
Love it.
and it always works out.
We might come from the same family. My mother turned 75 over the weekend,
Mhm.
and I
Oh,
gave her
happy
this.
birthday, mama.
I know, she's the cutest, sweetest little
I bet
human
she
ever.
is.
She's adorable, and she's
I
always
love it.
dressed to the nines. Very elegant. And she and my father have been through some really tough stuff. They're entrepreneurs. They've had a lot of loss. They've had a lot of challenges. And no matter what happens, they always come out of it like, that was the best thing that could have happened. And, they sort of rewrite the narrative about, oh, yeah, I never would have learned this lesson. I never would have become deeply involved in this other thing if it didn't happen. And I admire that so much. I hope that my kids get that, 'cause it really means you have, it's not that you're not getting any lessons from regret. I think regret is an okay, healthy thing. You have to learn from your mistakes. But this idea that, oh no, I was meant to learn the lesson, I was meant to be in the place is really transformational.
Well,
I
hope.
used to
Oh, go
go
ahead.
ahead.
I was going to say hope is my favorite feeling in the whole world. I say it's my favorite emotion is hope. And a lot of people say, "Ooh, I don't want to get my hopes up." And I always say, "You already did." Right?
Mm,
And and
You're trying to
hope,
talk your when you say that, you're
that's
trying to
right.
actually talk
You're
yourself out
having
of
an
it.
internal fight with yourself, which why? Right? Hope feels good, and I know I can deal with it if it doesn't happen. I've been through worse, right? So, why not have that amazing feeling? It feels so good to hope.
All of my work one of my producers actually said this to me one time. He said, he was just like, one of the most amazing things, because like once you get to be an anchor, you don't really do a lot of stories and things like that,
Mhm,
on your own in segments. You do them occasionally. And when I was hosting a show, there was one, producer I worked with, and he said, the thing that's amazing about all your stories, he said, no matter what it is you're talking about or telling the story, you always look for the hope. He said there's
mm.
always some hope in the story no matter what it's about. And I was like, "Huh, I never noticed that before." And I was like, "But yeah." And I remember when I don't know, this probably would have been maybe my 30s, late 30s, early 40s. Somebody said to me, "How do you stay so optimistic and you're so positive?" And I was like, and I felt like such a fraud in that moment because I always thought of myself as negative.
Where did
whoa.
that tape come from?
Follow me on this one because it took me a minute to figure this one out. And I was just like, "Wow, why?" I was like, "I know I sound positive and whatever, but I'm like, I'm the biggest realist there is." And I was like, "Sometimes I have kind of a negative bent, whatever." And
Mhm.
I literally spent half of my adulthood thinking this. Talking to my aunt, my dad's youngest sister, at one point, and I said, and I was in something had recently happened along the, when somebody talking about my positivity
Mhm.
and whatever. And I said, "But yeah," I said, Auntie Faye, I don't know why people see me that way." And she looked at me, she said, "Baby, she said, "You think you're negative because the rest of us are so crazy with our positivity that in comparison, you think that you're negative." She says, "You're not a negative person. You're a
Mm.
little more in touch with reality than the rest of us in this family." She was like, "But that's not," because I would always be the one, "But wait, y'all, maybe, la la,"
Mm.
whatever. And because I was that person, I would be like, "Y'all, I don't know. Let me see. Let me how we gonna do that though?" Because I'm a very practical person.
Mhm.
Yeah,
So for me, it's like you come with unicorns and rainbows. I'm gonna be like, "Yes, and how do we get the unicorn and
that's right,
rainbows though?
right.
What steps do we need to take to find the unicorns and the rainbows?"
So your family,
Because
their feet are off the ground, your tiptoes are at least still on the ground.
right, every now and
Yeah,
then I touch the grass,
that's right.
but my aunt literally, she was just like, "Oh, baby."
Oh, baby.
She was like, "No, you have a one," she said, "because you know how to make dreams come true."
Mm.
She was like, "'Cause you look for the way to do it." She said, "A lot of people," she was like, we got family members that all talk. That's all they do is talk about their dreams, and they don't never do it, and they happy with it, and that's fine." She said, "But you actually make it happen because you looking for the way to make it happen." And I was like, "Well, thank you, Annie Faye.
That's
I
really,
appreciate it." That's
really
powerful.
Love that.
yeah,
Love that.
that's a special quality.
'Cause it's a spectrum, and here's the thing, it's a spectrum of what that looks like, in compare like, when I tell you that side of my family is pathologically optimistic, it's insane, like, literally, my dad had dementia when I got politely invited to find my success elsewhere at that last show. I was
Mhm.
scared to tell him. He was still coherent, but I was scared to tell him because my mom had already passed at this point. I'm his sole caregiver. And I was scared to tell him I'd lost my job, that I was gonna and that I wasn't looking for another one because that was when I decided to start my business and in earnest.
Mhm.
And I was scared to tell him because I didn't want him to not feel secure where he was because I was providing financial support for
Mhm.
his care and other things. And my dad's reaction was, "Good, baby. Like, that's what now you're on your own. You get to call your own shots. Yes." Did you tell your Uncle Sonny? Did you tell Sonny? Because he's the entrepreneur in the family. And so I was like, no, I didn't tell him yet or whatever. And so I called my uncle and I'm telling him, he's like, oh, Jeanne, that's good. That's good. Like literally the best cheerleaders in the world. Like,
That's
no
awesome.
advice, no nothing. Now that uncle is the best salesman on the planet. Like,
That's
and I was like,
awesome.
Uncle Sonny, how do I? He said, it's fine, Jeanne. Just go be yourself. You'll be good.
Yeah, but
I was like,
that's
"Jeanne,
the
just
truth though, isn't it? I mean, you find success when you're able to, like, step into who you are.
100%. But if they don't tell you how, like, again, I'm the one like, Tell me how
Right,
to do
Mhm.
this."
right.
He was like, "Nah, you sell yourself. It's fine." But that's I mean, literally, that's the kind of family I come from, and
Yeah.
so, like, you should see our cousin chat. Like, all my girl cousins on that side, we have a cousin chat. It's like 10 of us in there because I have on that side, I think I have is it 18 first cousin?
My goodness.
Yeah, it's girl. My family is huge. But anyway, so it's like 10 of us on that chat. You should see how we cheat. Like literally,
It's the
it's
hype chat.
it's the hype chat. Like
Yeah.
we will talk mess about other people, but don't let nobody talk mess about us.
I love it. I
So
love it.
yeah.
I love it. I love it. Um, all right. Sorry, I need to
Jean,
refocus.
you've interviewed hundreds of Hollywood heavyweights and shared the mic with legends like Steve Harvey and George Wallace. What's one lesson about communication you learned from those experiences and working with those folks?
So funny story. I was on Celebrity Family Feud last night. It aired last night.
Stop it
I
right
taped it
now.
early, so I got to see George and Steve in the same room again, and it was so much fun. So it's on Hulu. It's Team George Wallace versus Team Lil Rel.
My
And if
gosh.
you haven't seen it, I won't tell you the outcome, but it was a lot of fun. I mean, I learned different things from every single person that I worked with, but I worked with a lot of comedians. I worked with all the kings of comedy, Bernie Mac, uh,
Oh,
Steve Harvey. I know, and Bernie being a Chicago guy,
yeah.
my dude. Um,
I love Bernie Mac so much, and I was so sad when he passed
Me
because
too.
I was like, "How much more?"
We all say that. Bernie,
Yeah.
and when I tell you
Oh,
he was one of the most generous, um, encouraging performers that I've ever met. It's and I've met
it
a
doesn't
lot.
yeah.
D.L. Hughley, really smart. Cedric the Entertainer, silly, fun, and always has like this different twist on these things. Like all of these guys, and I've in my career, I've met a lot of them, interviewed a lot of them, and then worked with many of them. The thing that I watched, gosh, one thing, it's hard to pick one thing, Ashley. I would say that the biggest thing I learned from them is discipline. Discipline
Mm,
about my craft
okay.
and understanding that you get out what you put in. All those people that I have met, um, that I've worked with, that I've gotten to see how they work and how they have gotten where they are. It is yes, it is about authenticity. Yes, it is about knowing what your strengths are and believing in them, but it's really about the discipline of how you bring it to life, of make turning knowing what you have to offer into a practice.
Mhm, mhm.
Like I think about the thing I find interesting is that we only really use that word for like doctors and lawyers or what have you. And I find it like when I was a kid, I was like, well, why they practicing at it? Shouldn't they already know? But when in reality, all of us should have a practice about our profession, about our calling. All of
Mhm,
us are here to do something.
mhm.
And the more we listen to our authentic value and the thing that we can do effortlessly, and then add discipline to that, to develop it, to deliver it to other people in the way. Because we're also here, not only are we here to do something in particular, we are here to do that thing in service of other people.
Hmm.
Mm.
It doesn't happen outside of that vacuum. Like those are I think that's, that's kind of like people talk a lot about finding purpose, especially midlife and all these other things. Honey, when you are true to who you are and you know what you have to offer and you work on that, your purpose finds you.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you are blessed to know what your purpose is and be able to walk in that, and to hear a calling and be able to move forward in that. Sometimes you don't, though. But if you keep walking that path, it will find you. And what I learned from all those amazing people that I worked with, and what I saw a through line with everybody that I've encountered and interviewed, is there is a discipline that goes behind, that supports the thing that they've discovered they do well, and honing it as a craft, and
Because
and
they're not
continually
just
working
jumping
at.
on stage and saying whatever they
No,
think. Right,
no.
right.
Dion Cole,
Oh, love,
who
love,
is so funny,
love,
also
love,
Chicagoan. We share a birthday.
love.
Way back in the day, it was a bunch of us that had birthdays in January. It was he, him, another guy, another comedian, Damon Williams, and myself, all born on January 9th.
Okay.
Different years, but all born on January 9th. So they would always have like this January birthday, and I would always go to it, bitterly cold in Chicago,
Mhm.
and we were kicking it. And it was a good time. But Dion used to have this thing, and I remember when he first started, he did this. He has this thing he does on stage where he has this little pad and the
And he
little
pulls
pencil, and
it.
he's doing this.
Yep.
And he tells the joke, and then he pulls it out of his pocket and do it. That is not a
Love it.
bit. Like, it has turned into a bit, and it looks like a bit, but he literally did that on stage when he first started, because he was working out material. I remember there was this thing called the Miller Genuine Draft. Remember that? Miller Genuine Draft Comedy Search. And they used to have all these local dates and at clubs all around Chicago, and they had them in different cities. And then they would have a competition for, the winner or what have you. And then that person, I think, would get to open for, a couple of comedians or whatever. It was a really big launching pad in the 90s for comedians. Dion was doing that in these little clubs going, you know, and, but George Wallace walks around with he has legal pads in his briefcase, and sometimes he'll bring, when he's working out material, he will walk on stage with that legal pad, and it'll sit next to him, and he makes notes about what people like. He doesn't do it necessarily in the moment, but he will do it, and use it. Steve used to write every morning.
Mm-hmm.
He had bits he did. We would be sitting there, and he was like, "Okay, how's this?" And we bounce off stuff. And, like, when I tell you, it's D.L. Hughley used to come in with this is before the internet was really something we used for newspapers and stuff. I know it's hard to imagine now. He would come in when he would fill in when Steve was out, because I worked with Steve before he had his nationally syndicated radio show. He started in Chicago, with a show. But when he was traveling, the other kings and other comedians would come in and fill in. When DL would fill in for him, he would come in with a stack of newspapers and had already read half of them by 5 o'clock in the morning.
Wow.
He would come in with like 3 local papers, the New York Times, like whatever they gave him at the hotel. So that would usually be like the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal, depending on where you stay. That would be sitting outside your door. Remember those days
Yeah.
when you would stay at a business hotel? And then he would have the Sun Times, the Tribune, and the Chicago Defender. The three
Just
main,
reading
the
through
two
'em.
main Chicago papers plus the Black Chicago paper, because we were an urban station. And he would literally be reading and pulling stuff out, because he's a very topical, comedian. He would do that. Bernie was like a variety show host. Like, he was always looking for talents in other people and bringing that out in them. Like,
Mm.
he really encouraged me a lot. And like, he used to have this night at this club called Milt Trenier's. The Trenier brothers were jazz musicians back in the day, and they were, I can't remember if they were from Chicago or if Chicago was their base, but one of them had like this little, like a speakeasy. Basically, you walk down into this basement. It was in Streeterville, in Chicago, and you would, the upper floors were some studios, and they had a club in the basement. But Bernie, on, was it Monday or Tuesday night? because he would always be in town one of those nights. He had a night, and I don't know if you remember Midnight Mac. It was on HBO. That show was based on those nights he would have.
Oh,
He had dancers called the Macaronis. He had a band called the Mac Men. And literally, when I tell you, it would be like a room that probably could fit, 30, 40 people, little
Uh-huh.
tables or whatever, and a little bitty stage in a corner. And it would be the hottest party in town. I saw Phyllis Hyman perform there because whoever would be in town would end up staying and doing a set. And it was just like this intimate thing. Sometimes people would be sitting on the floor. It was
wow.
insane. And if Bernie couldn't do it, he would have different folks, whether it was other comedians or, somebody come and host. And he told me, he was like, "You need to get your stage chops together." He was like, "You always out here hosting these little, you know, luncheons and galas and all this." He was like, "You need to get on stage with some people and work it out." So he was like, "I'm gonna be out of town. Chuck is gonna call you. You gonna host, and I can't remember what he called it. Oh God. It was just milk. We just went there. I can't remember. He had a name for the night and I can't remember what it was. And I went and hosted, and his road manager, Chuck, called me. He was like, "Okay, Gene, this is the night. Come on." And so I went and I was just like, "Y'all, I don't know what I'm doing. Bernie made me do this and I'm gonna figure it out." And when I tell you, it was like community, but it was also like, "You got to learn how to do this, sis." And there's no way to it but to go through it. So get your butt up on stage
Mhm.
and do what you got to do. And I was just like, and so the next time I saw him, he was like, "Yeah, you ain't good with the Mac men." He was like, "Cause you don't know nothing about, give him up." And I was like, "Bernie, and my mom was a musician," but he said, "Then you should know that." And I was like, "But I ain't never directed a band, sir." He was like, "It's not that damn hard, Gene." And I was just like, he was like, "You like music? I see you in here." He was like, "You got rhythm. It's not like you not, you know." And I was like, "Sir," I was like, "But how did I do?" He said, "Oh yeah, we're gonna have you back. I'm gonna be he was like, "We're gonna rotate through some comedians, let them have some time, whatever." He was like, "But then we're gonna bring you back in the summer." And so when you have people like that who trust you,
Yeah.
you don't want to let them down. They give you enough rope to hang yourself with, but they also showed you how to do it already, and you don't realize it until you're in the moment. And you're like, "Wait, I've seen them do this before. Wait, what would they do? Wait, okay,
Mm.
wait, hold up. Let me figure that out." And so it's the discipline.
You
All
you
saying all
just
that to
des-
say, it's the
you
discipline.
you just described my entire relationship with Ashley. So giving me an opportunity, seeing something in me, giving me enough rope to hang myself, but having taught me some
Mhm.
really valuable things. You just
My
described
mama
our
used to say,
relationship.
Kristen, that's a
"Yeah,
great
I can show
compliment.
you better than I can tell you." And that's what she's
Mm.
been doing. She's been showing you. She's
Yeah.
probably been telling you too, but sometimes I think we feel like we need to gather so much stuff before
Yeah.
we do anything.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
actually, I see this as a common thread for, first of all, people that I really, really like, but also the people that are here on this podcast. You know, the people who have made big moves and made big leaps. They're not really doing anything that much different. They're maybe doing 10% more towards taking the leap, but it just isn't. There's not a barrier. There's not
Mm.
a
Right.
that
Right.
you don't have to be blessed and approved before you're allowed to take a step. The folks who take big steps just do it.
Yeah.
And I think that that instinct is so beautiful and awesome and inspiring. And gee, not everyone would have like hopped up on that stage. I was, and Kristen, not everyone would like dive into starting and growing a company with me. I mean, there were some people who didn't want to do it. So I have been through my fair share of business doozies. Um,
Well, I'm sure you have, girl. Haven't we all?
oh, we have, but I'm so blessed to have found Kristen and Shiraz and the My Audio Rocks team. It's just such a great. You guys are so great.
Thank you.
Love
We're
that.
having a lot of fun. We're having a lot of fun.
And
So,
that's really the key.
you know what? It's funny. I closed a deal yesterday on something in a sales call, and I told my husband, because the idea that I would do sales was, if you had told me 3 years ago, I would have told you were crazy. And my husband said, "It's really different selling when you like what you're selling, huh?" And I was like, "Yup."
Mhm.
That part. And you know what? Here's the thing that's really crazy, and this is something that people fight me on, but you know what? Go fight your mama because I
Yeah,
don't care. We are all everybody is always selling something.
you're right.
I have a process in my book that I call these are the foundations for success. I call it success. I call it live it, tell it, sell it. And people fight me on the sell it part because I say all of us are always selling something at some point in time. We just don't look at it as selling. And somehow selling has become this bad word. But the
Mhm.
reality is that you are selling something even when you are asking your family what they want for dinner and you just want to cook one thing that night as opposed to 3 different things for 3 different appetites,
Yeah. It's I br
you know?
It's like
I
you're here.
blame the sales bros. That's who I blame, because that is what I thought of with sales,
Mhm.
is that because 'cause I've worked for a couple of companies where I've had to deal with the sales department. It was all men, right? It was a bunch of bro-y dudes that everything they said felt fake. They didn't care about what they were selling. They wanted the money they were gonna get from selling it.
Mhm.
Right? And it there was this it felt icky, and I think that's why it has gotten such a bad reputation. I've said it before, I'll say it again, Ashley really changed my thinking completely about sales and how it you don't have to be that. You're not you don't wanna lie, you know?
And there's even something to be learned from the people who put the ick in sales.
So too. I've
There is
led plenty of those sales teams, and to be fair to the sales bros, they spend a lot of time, working on their craft and honing what they're
Sure.
saying, and, that bravado, is there to protect their hearts, and they would absolutely never admit it, but that bravado is there because sales is a really vulnerable thing to do, and you get rejected
absolutely.
over and over and over and over and over again, and so if you are a puppy, it feels bad.
Yeah.
Mhm. But when they get to the point where they're, like, middle-aged, that bravado starts to fall off, and you start to see what the talent is underneath
Mm.
the sales and the things like that, you know? In the speaking world, you run into a lot of those guys, and I've dated a lot of guys who've been in sales or what have you because I don't know, I don't know if it's a personality thing or whatever, but you start to see what the gift is with it. And the reality is that you are offering a service. You're giving somebody something you want. My daddy told me when I was young, he said, "You know what, baby, if you're gonna buy something from somebody you like,
Mm.
you know, and uh-huh, right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Go keep going with that, right? Think about that.
Yeah.
Don't spend your money with somebody if
Mhm.
you don't like them. 'Cause there's a whole bunch of people in the world that you can buy stuff from. Buy it from
And,
somebody who deserves to get your money. And and then but
yeah.
and then the converse is true too. Be the person that somebody wants to buy something from,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Everything that you sell is not going to be for everybody,
Right.
but you can be that person for somebody.
Yeah.
And then you have these relationships and it does become a service. Yes, somebody's paying, but they're getting what they want from you. And
Mm.
they're feeling like they're being taken care of.
Yeah.
You
Mm,
know,
mhm.
even in even something that has one of the worst reputations in the world, car sales. I love the dealership I go to. Love
Yeah, a
it.
really good one, yeah,
You
is
know what I'm saying?
yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
if you get the right dude at the right moment or the right woman at the right moment and stuff, you calling him for every car you got after the girl, where you at?
For
Yeah.
sure.
What dealership you at now?
I sold cars for 7.5 minutes, and
Did you?
I did, yeah, it was miserable. I don't know anything about cars. I didn't even know what a chassis was until after I stopped working there, and, like, it was truly pathetic. Every time I had to, like, move a car, I'd be like, "Oh, it's a stick. I don't drive a stick. Someone has to do it for me." I mean, it was, like, so ill prepared, but, I had a lot of clients because I was a reasonable human and,
And when you're selling a car, you're not actually selling a car. Most of the time, when you're selling something, you're not selling the thing. You're selling the access that that thing gives people.
Mhm. Mhm.
Whatever it is, you're not selling car like, if you wanna take it up, there's a speaker, who Pete Shan, who talks about the ladder of abstraction. Like, you go up to what does this really mean? You're not really selling a car. What does a
Sure.
car mean? It means movement. What does movement mean? It means freedom. Right,
And I
that's
do
what you're
Yeah.
selling to people.
and I
S
think
for
for
some people, it's
me
just
yeah.
transportation,
Yeah,
but,
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think for me, one of the things that I've realized is, yes, you're absolutely right. I'm selling the thing that can help people, but I want to help those people. I genuinely want these people to be helped. I want them to
and people pick
have
up what you're putting down.
yeah, I want them to have the thing that's going to help them and that they're gonna be proud of,
Mhm.
right? So, yeah, I hear what you're saying. I wanna talk a little bit about your teaching because 'cause you're teaching at
Yes.
Northwestern.
Yes.
What do
Yes.
you love about working with the students? I'm sure there's many things. And
My gosh.
what do they teach you?
Girl, a lot. A lot. So here's the thing that's interesting. So I teach in a master program, the Master of Science in Communication program, in the School of Communication. And, for the first few years, for the first half of the time that I started teaching there, I was teaching adult learners, like people who were kind of mid-career, late early, beginning of mid-career, mid-30s to 40s, professionals, people who had had several jobs, had a solid career at this point. And teaching them was interesting because I got to see what how what I was teaching them they could use in the moment in their
Mhm.
work,
Mhm.
right? With the experience. Since the pandemic, higher ed has really changed and shifted because of the shifts in the job market and what people are, able to get, in terms of benefits for tuition and things like that. So now most of my students are Gen Zers, either straight out of college, looking for their first job, maybe in their first internships, some of them in their first job. So most of my students now are 20 somethings. I think I've learned more from them because they don't have any other frame of reference of how because the class I teach is, I did do some crisis communication teaching, with that other group. So it was some presentation stuff, some media training, and then, how do you communicate in crisis?
Mhm.
What is sort of your strategy in that?
Mhm.
And, while I do cover a little bit of that, my class is called Executive Presence and Performance.
Mm.
So it's about business communication, but it's also about how you show up. Because I think our young people, we have not done a great job of preparing them for the real world.
Mhm.
We have taught them about achievement absent context. Of what are you working for as opposed to just grades or, anything like that. And I have learned from them what service looks like
Hmm.
to each other, to the things that they hope for. I it reminds me of what it means to be 20 something and not know what is going like and a lot of them are anxious about the world, about
Sure.
their place in it as we were at that time, but they are so serious.
Really?
And oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Interesting.
I think Gen Z is one of the most
But yeah,
underestimated
they're gonna save us all.
generations. They because they are thoughtful,
Mm.
um, which also makes them anxious. Um, they are, observant,
Mhm.
and they ask really important questions. Like, cause and fearless authenticity challenges them when I tell them, "Okay, listen, who you are is the get," and they're just like, "No, but it's what cause I'll ask them, "What value, do you think you bring to other people? And, like, what work do you wanna do? What benefits do you think other people will get from this? And, what do you want them to get from this? And what do you do well?" And when I tell you these children, and I shouldn't call them children, but they children unto me, as my mama would say.
Yeah. I could
Um,
have given birth to every one of them.
right.
So I'm of that age.
That exactly. And I look at them and I go, you know, y'all, you really don't see like, and I never forget the moments like the moments of discovery are so
Mm,
important, right? Because I've had young people tell me, well, I've never worked, so I don't know what I can do. And I said, but you've been doing work. Being a student, that's your job. Okay. Your parents are paying, maybe some of y'all are paying, your way through this. Maybe your parents are paying, whatever the case is, but that's what this is what your profession is right now. And yes, you're working towards something else. And no, you may not have done something for money, but you've been doing stuff. And then you start to hear these stories like, what do you enjoy? And these things. Like this one kid had like, 1 million followers on TikTok.
wow.
It was one of my international students. So it was the Chinese version of TikTok. Had like 1 million followers and was just sharing stories about her life in the US and about, things that are different and the things she misses from
Mm,
home or the
mhm.
things she liked, whatever. And I was just like, what else can you do with that?
Right.
You amass this following being yourself. You're a storyteller, right? And she was like, oh.
Yeah, what a gift you've given her.
And then another one, but she already had the gift. I just pointed to it. I just pointed to it and highlighted it for her. Another one, she was like, "Yeah, I've never really done anything. So, but I want to do this." And I said, "Well, what kind of extracurricular activity?" I was like, "What are some of the things you've done that you've enjoyed?" Turns out she developed a whole thing for like the Red Cross. She was a competitive swimmer when she was a kid. And then she started volunteering for the Red Cross. And she came up with this program that they had to help kids know what to do like in a tsunami. I want to say was she from Taiwan? Or Hong Kong. She might have been from Hong Kong. But she volunteered for the Red Cross, came up with this thing. I said, "Honey,
Right?
that's a whole job, baby girl."
Yeah.
I was like, "That's organization." Another kid during the pandemic, she was the president of her student association of her ethnicity, and she was with a group of kids who couldn't go back home during the pandemic, so they had to be in the dorms and doing stuff, and like the food service was limited and all this other stuff. This young lady went to the Chamber of Commerce in the town where she went to school and was like, what restaurants would be willing? Like, we are pooling our money for this. We are, because there's certain meals we don't get every week. We need to supplement our stuff from food service. Are there any restaurants that would be interested in working with us? This young woman coordinated with her, with her group to feed the kids in her dorm.
Wow.
I was like, "Ma'am,
Yeah.
Yeah.
ma'am." I was
You
like I
you
was like
you guys already have jobs, you're just not getting paid for them.
you giving it away." I was like, "This is how you start to talk about yourself and your work." Like, she just didn't value it because they were just trying to live. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah,
Yeah.
She
yeah.
did what was needed to live in that moment. And it's interesting to watch them like, the biggest gift I get is seeing them discover the things that they love, that they're
Yeah.
good at, and
Yeah.
realizing that it translates into how they talk about themselves when they go on these interviews. Because a lot of what I'm doing is preparing them for interviews.
Mhm.
By and large, the section where I'm like, "Okay, your final could be an interview or this, that, and other." That's one of exercises they request the most. And it's the one I do with them the most because that's the thing they're most scared of. They were like, "I don't know if this person sees this in me." I said, "But you got to tell them."
Mm,
I was like, "They probably see it, but they want you to say it
That's
because
right.
when
They wanna
you
know
see it,
you see it. That's right, that's
because
right.
then they don't have to convince you of it and you'll go along with the program."
Right, right, right. That's awesome.
Jean, your insight is incredible. And thank you so
Yeah.
much
Thank
for
you.
joining us today and
Thank
for
you.
sharing your wisdom on fearless authenticity.
Thank you so much for having me, Ashley and Kristen. It was great talking to you guys. I
You
appreciate your
as
openness to
well.
I can't
my
wait to read your
ideas.
book. I really
Thank
cannot wait.
you.
Where
I
can we
hope you
find it?
read it and you love it. You can find it everywhere books are sold. It is available in audiobook form, digital, and hardcover.
Wonderful.
Available Amazon, Barnes and Noble, all the usual places that you would buy your book. You can go to fearlessauthenticity.com/book to get all the actual links if that's what you would like. But
And we'll also
search
put them
for
in
it.
the show notes.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Amazing.
You're amazing. You're amazing. I knew you'd be a fantastic guest, and you did not disappoint.
Jeanne, thank you so much for joining us today and for sharing your wisdom on fearless authenticity.
Jeanne's book is Fearless Authenticity, Lead Better, Sell More, and Speak Sensationally. We'll drop the link in the show notes, like we mentioned, so you can grab a copy too.
And don't forget to check out her podcast, Fearless Authenticity with Jeanne Sparrow.
Thanks for listening to Authors Aloud. Be brave, be free, be you. We'll see you next time.